Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a huge stack of sources, all drawn this week from the pages of Addis Fortune, and really boil it down to what you need to know.
Exactly. And our mission today is all about policy in action. We're going to give you a clear view on the economic and social shifts happening in Ethiopia right now.
And we're covering a lot of ground, from coffee fields and construction sites in Addis, all the way to the really tough humanitarian crisis up north.
Yeah. And when you look at all these articles together, there's this fascinating thread running through them.
A common tension.
A deep one. On one side, you have these really ambitious government regulations, and they're aimed at fixing serious, long-standing problems, inequity for farmers, corruption in construction, you name it.
The intent seems good.
The intent is absolutely clear. But these policies are slamming right into some harsh economic realities. We're talking persistent inflation, global market volatility, and sadly, dwindling international aid.
So the real story is this gap between a bold policy idea and what actually works on the ground.
That's it. That's the core conflict we're seeing everywhere.
Okay, so let's start with Ethiopia's, well, its golden harvest coffee, Oromia Regional State, which produces something like 79% of the country's coffee.
A huge amount.
It's just imposed a new 5% levy on all coffee bought for export.
Right.
That feels like a major shakeup.
It is. And the reasoning behind it is it's pretty compelling. Officials like Tesfaye Gesho are arguing that they have to fix these deep structural problems.
You mean the fact that farmers don't see the profits?
Exactly. For years, all this exported coffee hasn't really translated into gains for the smallholders. The state basically figured out that anything less than 100 birr per kilogram, well, is just not viable for a farmer. So this levy is meant to keep the price above that line.
Okay, so the goal is to push more security, more wealth back to the producers, and the money from the levy itself.
That's supposed to be reinvested directly. Things like farmer training, better quality management, post-harvest handling, that kind of thing.
And they are trying to soften the blow for exporters, right?
Right. The levy is calculated on 50% of the market value, so it's a bit less than it sounds, and it's also tax deductible for the exporters.
And it also gets rid of an old frustration, those coat cleanliness fees. For anyone who doesn't know, what exactly are those?
They're essentially local quality and grading charges. So by rolling them into this new system, the policy is trying to, streamline everything and encourage more investment at the source. On paper, it's a very elegant idea.
That's the local plan, but this is where the global reality just comes crashing in. How can you set a price floor at home when the world market is being flooded with coffee?
And that global context is it's shocking. You have these massive oversupply forecasts driving prices down everywhere. Brazil alone is expecting a 30% jump in Arabica production.
30%.
It's contributing to a record global output of nearly 179 million bags. That kind of outside pressure makes the domestic price floor incredibly difficult to hold.
And locally, exporters are just squeezed. The sources say they're facing collapsing margins.
Yes, because domestic prices are already high because of speculation. We saw that wild example of Yirgacheffe coffee selling locally for 21,000 birr per 17 kilograms.
While the international price was closer to 17,000.
Exporters are losing millions on a single shipment just to fill their orders.
So that brings up the big question of who carries the risk.
It does. Barakat Alamaihu, an expert on this, warns that exporters can't just absorb 5 million birr losses forever. They're going to try and push that risk back down the chain.
Back to the farmers.
Back to the farmers. By offering lower prices next season or demanding lower grades.
So the very policy designed to protect farmers could, in the face of all this, end up making them even more vulnerable, forcing them to cut back on essentials like fertilizer.
It's a very real danger. The policy is ambitious, but its success depends on having some way to shield the farmer from this volatility. And right now, that part isn't clear at all.
All right, let's pivot now from the coffee fields to construction sites in Addis Ababa. The city has ratified a new regulation to bring some discipline to what is, let's be honest, a chaotic sector.
And it's desperately needed. You have 71% of the city's budget going to construction, but underperformance and delays are basically the norm.
This new regulation, though, sounds like a real shockwave. It hits at the core problems, and the industry is pretty rattled.
Completely rattled. There are two big, very restrictive changes.
Walk us through them.
First, the city is bringing in fixed price contracts, and they're banning any and all price revisions.
Wait, a fixed price? In an economy with crazy, unpredictable inflation, that sounds less like discipline and more like a huge gamble.
It's a massive risk. And that's not all. The second big change is eligibility. Now, a company has to complete 85% of its last city contract before it can even bid on a new one.
85%.
And prime contractors need to have completed 3 similar jobs before.
You can just feel the anxiety coming off the page. Managers like Manad and Mohammed are saying, input prices, cement, steel, diesel, they can change twice a month.
So a fixed price becomes almost impossible. He's worried it'll lead to contractors just abandoning projects because they'll go broke trying to cover the difference.
And then there's that 85% rule. Ahmed Syed from Sericon Construction said it basically locks medium-sized firms onto one project for years.
Yeah, he says it only favors the giants with deeper pockets who can handle multiple long projects at once. And he's got a point.
We also have Professor Abebe Dinku, a civil engineering professor, weighing in. He gets the need for discipline, but he calls the fixed price rule unrealistic.
His argument is that it just ignores the real on-the-ground cost differences. A project in Bole is going to have a different cost profile than one in Golele.
Why is that?
It's things like, permit complexity, access to transport, local labor costs, all these site-specific things that this broad rule just doesn't account for.
He also criticized the process itself, saying the regulation was pushed out before any real consultation.
Exactly. And it seems to confuse contractors with developers. I mean, without that dialogue, you can end up with a policy that's trying to solve the right problem, but in a totally unworkable way.
So you risk creating a system where only the biggest firms, or maybe the ones willing to cut corners, can actually survive?
That's the fear.
While Addis is trying to impose discipline on its concrete structures, we have to turn to a much more devastating kind of failure, the humanitarian crisis in the north.
It's just a grim reality. Across Tigray and Amhara, you have about 4.5 million internally displaced people.
And it feels like a slow-motion catastrophe. The international lifeline has just collapsed. Only 17% of that massive $46 billion appeal was actually funded.
And that lack of funding translates directly into what the sources call high-level starvation.
The numbers are staggering. Over 330 recent deaths in just one camp, Hitsats. Families are getting by on 15 kilos of grain and maybe a half-liter of oil a month.
We read that heartbreaking account from Abraham Ibratu, a priest. He talked about miraculous survival. But his biggest problem is not even having a way to grind the sorghum they're given or get basic medicine.
And making this all worse is this political fight over who's responsible for distributing the aid.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Federal authorities are accusing the TPLF of diverting aid for political reasons.
But Talayaro officials are firing back, saying the aid they get is poor quality and just not enough. One official, Gade Azanu, said they get oil, but no salt, no pepper, no money for grinding. It's almost useless.
It's so hard to even process that. This isn't just politics, it's a systemic failure. Abida Baminaye from Addis Ababa University, he calls the response inadequate and says it lacks any long-term vision.
He pointed out that these IDP camps are basically turning into permanent settlements.
Unplanned, impoverished cities with no infrastructure. The core issue is that the political disputes are blocking any real solutions like safe returns or resettlement. The experts are just pleading for humanitarian aid to be taken out of the arena for political games.
Because the people paying the price for that gridlock are the most vulnerable.
Every single time.
Okay, shifting back to the economy. Let's look at how these pressures are hitting businesses and consumers. First up, a new customs directive.
This one is putting importers under immense pressure. It gives them just a 15-day window to challenge the base price that customs sets for their goods.
15 days, that sounds tight.
The importers are calling it almost impossible. Yeshius Ademea, a veteran importer, he explained that just gathering the paperwork, invoices, price lists, shipping documents can take longer than that. Global supply chains just don't move that fast.
And this creates what you call the discrepancy trap, right? It can force honest businesses to pay tax on inflated values.
Yes. So customs is trying to fight under invoicing, which is a real problem. They have their own price list. Let's say a manufacturer's list price is $100, but an importer got a bulk discount and paid $70.
Which is a totally normal business practice.
Totally normal. But customs often rejects that $70 transaction value because their list says $100. So the importer is forced to pay duties and taxes based on a price they never actually paid.
Which inflates their costs massively.
Correct. It hits their excise tax, their duty, their VAT. The intent is good, but it's putting a huge burden on legitimate traders.
And we can see these economic pressures, the weak burr, high taxes, trickling all the way down into social life. New Year's Eve party tickets in Addis.
It's a fascinating link. Ticket prices at the big international hotels, like the Sheraton, have jumped by 25–33%. A single ticket to the Sheraton's party is now 25,000 birr.
Wow. And that's tied directly to the currency.
Directly. Promoters have to pay these big international acts, like Trey Songz, in US dollars. Nahusne Ayalu from a marketing group confirmed it. The dollar cost is what's driving up the birr ticket price.
But there's a cultural cost here too, isn't there?
A huge one. Dawit Solomon, a creative founder, he criticized this trend. He says promoters are just chasing profit and what's viral on TikTok, and they're ignoring established Ethiopian musicians.
He called them arbitrary ticket hikes.
And he says it limits opportunities for any local artist over 35. I mean, when your economy is prioritizing sending scarce dollars out of the country for foreign entertainment, you really risk undermining your own local culture. It's just not a sustainable model.
So when we pull all these threads from Addis Fortune together, what's the big picture? It feels like this deep, inescapable tension.
It really is. You have these ambitious new rules for equity and quality, but they are constantly colliding with high inflation, global volatility, and these critical gaps in how they're implemented. The friction is everywhere.
From the farmer to the importer to the concert goer.
And what it really underscores is that new rules aren't enough. You need strong planning, you need real consultation, and you need transparent accountability to shift the country from just building more to actually building better.
And to protect the people who are most vulnerable.
The IDPs, the smallholder farmers, they're the ones who always end up bearing the brunt of all this uncertainty.
Which leaves us with a final provocative thought for you to think about. If Ethiopia's progress keeps getting stalled by these fights over who takes the loss exporters versus farmers, the city versus contractors, federal versus regional authorities, what kind of system could actually be put in place?
What institutional mechanism could guarantee that money from something like the Oromia coffee levy or the huge construction budget actually reaches the people it's supposed to help, instead of just getting lost in the politics?
It's a big question and one worth pondering. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into our sources. We hope we've given you what you need to be well informed.
We'll see you next time.